Picked up this walnut slab from a local sawyer, and I think I'm gonna cut this up and see if I can make some cutting boards. It's a pretty nice piece. I think I can maybe cut it about right here, and I can get maybe 2 boards out of that top piece, and then I could probably get another couple of boards down here underneath, right there under that bend. But that's going to be today's project, so let's get to it. Alright, I've got this slab cut down, but it's a little bit warped, and it's like that on both sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach it to this, and I'm going to shim it so that it doesn't wobble, and that way I'll be able to run it through my planer, and I should be able to get a nice flat side. Then I can flip it over and just run it through straight away. Get a nice square board, and I should be able to get 2 cutting boards out of this. Okay, I think if I just shim it up right here, I can get most of the play out just with this one shim. So I should be able to put another small shim over on the other side, maybe just a piece of cardboard or something. Then I should be able to run this through the planer. All right, let's see how we did. Okay, that's the side that I did not plane. Let's see how the plain side does. Still have a tiny bit of play, but most of the play is out, so we'll keep going. I tell you, this isn't something that I noticed up front, but after planing this down, this thing is riddled with wormholes. And it's like that on both sides. But if I take a look at the end, it doesn't look like the wormholes go down that deep. Maybe 1/4 of an inch there, 1/8 of an inch there. So I'm thinking if I plane it down enough, I might be able to get all of those wormholes out and I'll still be able to use this. Crossing my fingers. Well, I don't know if this is going to work or not. It seems like the further I go down, the new wormholes pop up, and it's even worse on the other side. They're just everywhere. I'm going to do one last ditch effort. I'm going to use this as a straight edge, and I'm going to clamp that down, and I'm going to cut this into strips. See if I can get some strips out of this that don't have any wormholes in it. If that doesn't work, then I'll call this one a bust. Alright, so by attaching it to a known straight edge, I should be able to push this through and get a straight edge cut on this side. So that's what we're going to do. Alright, I've got a nice straight edge here now. So I'm ready to cut some strips. And this is the width that I want, so I set my fence up to match that. So I'm going to run this through and get some strips and see if I can't come up with something that doesn't have any wormholes in it. Alright, after cutting these up into strips, looks like I'll be able to get at least one cutting board out of this. I don't think I can. There were too many wormholes. I think I'll be able to make one. So what I want to do is I want to have one strip of the padauk, and then I'll wrap that with a couple of strips of maple, and then I'll have my walnut on the edges. But that's what I'm going to do. So let me cut some strips of maple and padauk, and then I'll cut them to length. Alright, there's my slats. I think that's going to look pretty good. I've got walnut, maple, padauk, maple, walnut, walnut, walnut. So I'll get that orange and white stripe a little bit off center. So now I need to glue these guys up. And once they're glued up, I can plane them down and get it nice and flat, and then trim up the edges, make that nice, and we'll go from there. All right, so you've probably heard a lot about end grain and edge grain and surface grain. So let's take a look at what they're talking about. So this would be end grain if you have this, the end of the grain, facing up. If you had it facing like this, where the grain is going up and down, then that would be called edge grain. And if it's like this, where the grain's going left to right, that would be surface grain. So the most common cutting boards are edge grain. So that's going to be what I end up doing. End grain is considered the best, and mainly because it's the easiest on knives. But the reality is, if you're only using your cutting board occasionally, maybe once a day or even a couple times a day, you really don't need end grain. End grain is mainly for professionals that are using their cutting boards 8 hours a day. They really need that capability, but just for the everyday use, edge grain is more than enough, and even surface grain would probably be okay for occasional use. But I'm going to go with edge grain, and so I've got my strips cut so that the grain is going up and down, and I'll position my slats so that the grain is also going up and down. So that's what I'm going to go with. All right, I got it all glued up. It's small, so I can get away with just 4 clamps. And what I used for the glue is Titebond 3 because it's waterproof. So I'll let that dry, and then I'll clean it up, and we'll get it planed out flat. All right, cutting board's out of the clamps, and I put a 15-degree angle on my table saw so I could give a little bit of a chamfer all the way around. And then I took my round over bit, 1/4-inch round over bit, and went around the top. So I just need to give it a finish sanding. And that's what she's going to look like. And then I'll need to give it a finish of mineral oil, and then a combination of mineral oil and beeswax. But there she is. Ended up being about 1 5/8 inches thick by 13 by 8. So it's just a small one. But that's about what I was able to salvage out of that damaged walnut. But I'm happy with it. And again, I've got walnut, 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 maple, padauk, maple, and walnut.